Well, welcome to the Middlesex Moments radio show. I'm Dr. Anna Wasesha, president of Middlesex Community College, and today my guest is Sara MacSorley. Sara is the executive director. Is that a good title? That works. CEO, COO, CFO, and all of the above at the Green Street Arts Center,
it's the Teaching and Learning Center now, actually.
Oh, so the Green Street Teaching and Learning Center located in the north end of Middletown on Green Street.
That's right.
Hence the name. Why did you change the title?
So we're a program of Wesleyan University, and one of the things that happened when I came on board a little over 3 years ago was Wesleyan combined the Green Street Arts Center and a teacher professional development program called the Project to Increase Mastery of Math and Science. So we had been doing a lot of this math and science teacher work at Green Street as well, and had been looking at really integrating art, math, and science into all of our programs versus thinking of them as separate things. Really looking at how we can sort of add more value to our programming if we look at things more together. So like, for example, we have arts and science classes or art and math classes in our after-school program. So we decided that, arts, even though that's still at the core of what we do, calling ourselves an art center wasn't really representative of everything that we were doing at Green Street. So we decided on our 10th anniversary last year to do a rebranding as the Teaching and Learning Center.
So TLC.
TLC.
There you go. Yeah.
Good acronym, too.
Right. It used to be an old elementary school. It used to be a young elementary school when it was built. Now it's an old one.
Sebastian's, I believe, right? It was an old parochial school.
So you have classrooms that have been converted, or what's it like on the inside?
They did a renovation from the original school into the art center space. So it's great because it's a building that has a good balance of flexible classroom space that you can use for all types of classes and programming, and also sort of really specific spaces like a dance studio and a sound recording studio. So those are for very specific sort of topics. And then the other spaces are really multi-purpose for the types of work you can do in them, which is great. So it's 3 stories, 12,000 square feet, I think.
Oh, it's large.
Yeah.
And it's summertime, so is it air conditioned?
It is air conditioned.
Yay!
Yes.
These days, that would be almost impossible to operate. And schools were built without air conditioning.
Right. And we had, it was 2 years ago, the first year that we ran our K-8 Math Institute with a bunch of teachers. That was funded by a state math science partnership grant. We had our air conditioning break. So it's a 2-week, 80-hour intensive program. And on the 3rd floor, it gets pretty stuffy. Our plan B was we had this sort of standing air conditioning unit that was about 6 feet tall and looked like something from a sci-fi movie that was going to kind of come alive. And so it worked, but you really had to kind of stay in that room. So it wasn't ideal because it was loud and stuff too, but you make it work.
Yeah. I have lots of sharp memories of sitting in classrooms in the summer, sweltering from the heat and trying to concentrate.
Yeah, well, we don't have to do that anymore
because
now it's fixed.
That's good.
We have the city to thank for that too.
Oh, good. So the city's been involved in this project as well.
Well, it's actually, it started as a collaboration between the City of Middletown, Wesleyan University, and the North End Action Team. And so it's actually a city building that Wesleyan rents. So we still, when it comes to building issues, we still share that responsibility.
Mm-hmm. Well, so a lot of the work you're doing is focused on girls in science, and so what are you doing this summer?
So one of the programs that we're doing, and this is our 3rd year, is a Girls in Science summer camp. So it's a week-long program where we have girls who are going into grades 4, 5, and 6 come to Green Street for this week of hands-on science activity. And this came out of just a conversation I ended up having with one of the chemistry professors at a luncheon that I went to, where some of the women faculty members in the science department really wanted to start doing some more outreach. And this is what came out of it. This year we have Dr. Erica Taylor, who's in chemistry, 2 new professors, Michelle Personic and Candace Edson, who are in chemistry and physics, and also Dr. Ashita Mukherjee, who's going to be doing a lot of our DNA projects this year. So there's some new people involved, which is great. So it's all female faculty, and then also we have 3 women undergrads and or graduate students. I think a couple of them this year are graduate students who come and help out for the week too. So the girls really get exposed to a lot of different women who are working in different areas of science.
You've done this in the past? You did it last year?
This is our 3rd year.
3rd year. So, well, we have to take a break. This happens inevitably. But when we come back, let's talk some more about girls in science.
Great.
Well, we're back to Middlesex Moments Radio Show, and Sara MacSorley from the Green Street Teaching and Learning Center, TLC. And we ended the last segment of the program on girls in science. So why should girls be in science?
Well, just like any other field, groups benefit from diversity. So instead of it just being one type of person sort of putting their ideas out at the table, it really helps if everyone's at the table. And in the sciences, traditionally, women have really sort of, the sciences haven't been especially friendly for making it an equal footing for women. So, in some fields, you see they're a little bit better at that now. We've made a lot of progress over the years, but it's still, when you look at the science jobs and the technology jobs, especially sort of the projections for how many more of those jobs we're going to have in the next 10 to 15 years, and then sort of the percentages of women in the population versus women in those jobs, they're pretty low, and even lower when you're looking at people of color in those jobs too. So, a lot of times the sciences still have some work to do when it comes to being more inclusive in the people that they hire into their programming. And there's a couple ways to think about it, because you have the interest piece, right? You want to make sure that girls and young women are interested in these careers. And then as they're starting to train for them, you have the retention piece, where you want to make sure they stay interested in those careers and that they're supported sort of as they move their way up. So you have a lot of programs out there who are working on sort of both of those ends of the spectrum.
Do you think there's a lot of sort of institutionalized discrimination against women and people of color in the sciences? I mean, when you think about it, why aren't there more women and people of color in the sciences, and what are those barriers?
Well, I think a lot of it, it has to do with just sort of historically how things have been done, right? And this is true not just in the sciences, but when you look at, say, the number of women CEOs of big companies, right? They're kind of few and far between. And that doesn't mean that there aren't qualified people out there to be doing that. It just means that sometimes there are issues with sort of a certain culture that's projected. So, for example, sometimes you hear about in Silicon Valley, some of those big tech companies that are hiring young people are really sort of, the culture they project is more attractive to young men, which is sometimes just a turnoff to women who are qualified and in that field but may not want to go into a company that has that kind of a culture. And it doesn't even necessarily mean that those places wouldn't be welcoming to women. It's just not kind of the energy that they put off. And then at the same time, too, sometimes you have issues with hiring practices and or promotion practices. And some companies may not even realize that they're doing that, but they are. But the good thing is that there are ways to fix that. There have been several studies in STEM fields where, the experiment is basically you give a hiring committee within your different resumes the same exact resume, but one with a woman's name and one's with a man's name, or one with a more ethnic sounding name versus, like John Smith. And people will pick the male or more white sounding names sometimes, and it's not even, they don't even realize they're doing it. So there's this implicit bias piece where, and women have it too, so it's one of those things where we just kind of have to also be more aware of what our own biases are, so we can sort of address those when they come up in those situations.
Right. So how do you prepare a young girl to be able to weather those storms, Well,
I think, there's support's really important. So it's sort of having the exposure to, there are women out here who are doing this. Which
you do with your program.
We do with Girls in Science, the summer camp at Green Street. But just in general, sort of changing how we talk about scientists. There are a lot of incredible women out there currently doing science in all sorts of fields, but they're not necessarily part of the regular narrative when we hear about science. And there's a lot of folks out there who are changing that. Like, you hear about, like, National Geographic has incredible women who are correspondents for a lot of their work. And you hear a lot more in sort of the upcoming computer science. You hear about Black Girls Code all the time now, where they're running all these programming for young women of color. And I think they started in New York City. And they just started a big partnership with Google. So now they're in a Google building, which is great because it'll help the company sort of better interact with the programs. It can really be a partnership now. And so you have to have the exposure. And it helps when, as a young person, to see someone that you can relate to in whatever way that is, to kind of see yourself in those positions. So I think that helps. And then also sort of connecting with that support network. So as you're say you decide to go into technology, and as you're progressing through, undergrad and your research projects and your internships, someone you can talk to if you come up against some of those issues that make it hard. And any of us who've been through a grad program in any field know that, college and graduate school has its challenges, and sometimes it's really difficult. So it's important to have someone who's your support system or sort of your professional mentor that you can go and talk to. And there's a lot of organizations out there specifically for women or people of color in the sciences that exist to really kind of help mentor people coming up in the pipeline.
It seems like science is one of the complicated developments. Isn't that funny to think about it as a development? It's been developing since the beginning of time. But now in terms of the interface with humans, so for example, drones raises a whole ethical kind of dimension about how you use science to, create warfare that might be an unfair advantage against the people who also don't have drones to fight against you, for example. Or with a business with security of privacy, security of your data, and people who hack into it and use it for other reasons. And that's science too. So do you talk to do young girls even begin to think about, what are the applications of science and the limits of those applications?
The camp that we do, we don't get into the ethics so much because it's a younger group, but as you get older you do. And I think that's one of those things that it's just important for anyone going into science to consider. And I had a scientific ethics class in college, sort of talking about you still want to be doing good with what you have, right? And the drones and the technology is kind of what we hear about now, but I mean, if you think back to some of the discoveries in medicine, I mean, ethics has always been part of the conversation. And then also there's the how do you know you're doing the right thing with your science? And then there's other components like how are you communicating your science, which looks very different now than it did 20 years ago because of the social media component and things like that. So it's kind of like anything else where sometimes the technology outpaces how we talk about the technology. So, in some ways we're still trying to catch up with that. But I think, having those ethical conversations in general can sort of help people figure some of those things out with the tech.
Yeah, I'd like to believe that women would make an important contribution in that dimension of science, Let's stand back and think about what we're doing. Yeah. And
there are some men out there who do that too.
I'm sure there are. Yeah.
And it's important in sort of any of these conversations about diversity, like allies are really important too, right? So finding the men who are also the leaders in this area who are kind of helping to support the women do this and get more visibility for it, they're a really important part of the solution too.
Right. So you're working this summer with the summer camp, and there are still some spaces available.
There are still some spaces available, yep. So it's August 1st through 5th at Green Street, so in Middletown, Connecticut. We spend a whole day on the Wesleyan University campus, too. It's from 8:30 to 4 in the day, and for girls going into 4th, 5th, or 6th grade. So we still have some openings available, and folks can go to our website, which is wesleyan.edu/Green Street for more information, or our main office number is 860-685-7871. And some of the slots are also full scholarship slots too, so if it's something that either your child or somebody who might be interested, it's worth looking up.
So if you have an 8, 9, or 10-year-old daughter, how do you figure out whether or not they might be interested? What would a parent ask a child about this opportunity?
Well, I think, kids are starting to learn about it in school, and it's also, I was 8 when I decided I wanted to be a marine biologist. So
okay,
I think
so you can relate.
You sort of see, I wanted to go to the aquarium, and I wanted to buy every book out there that was about marine animals. And I tell my mom it was a career investment whenever I wanted anything that was marine related, so she couldn't say no, which was kind of fun. But, so it's really just sort of thinking about what they're talking about, what kind of things they're wanting to read, what kind of things they're wanting to watch. And then, science is around us every day. And that's one of the things that we try to make sure everybody recognizes at the camp. So even if it's, you hear a lot of times, I like to spend my time out in the woods hiking when I was a kid, or so there's this nature piece, or now there's a lot of the tech piece too, where it's like if you really enjoy the computer games or some of the games, Minecraft, that a lot of the kids like, there's there's science in the development of those. And
Absolutely.
that's something you can learn to understand more. Like, would you be into something like that? So I think it's really just sort of knowing where it is and being able to have those conversations.
So when you are having the young girls at Green Street, not at Wesleyan would give you opportunities to be in the lab, so there's a little more hands-on work. But what would the day look like?
So for example, on the first day, we start with sort of a segment on what scientific inquiry is, and how you go through the scientific method, and how it's all about observing and asking questions and trying to find solutions. And then we go through talking about measurement and sort of how you come up with standard units and how you can measure all these different things like length, weight, volume, sort of the whole gamut of that. And then we do work with talking about bacteria and testing different parts of the building to see what areas have more bacteria or not, and that not all bacteria are bad. A lot of bacteria is actually really good for you. And then we have some programming this year that's doing electronics work. So they're going to be making some circuits and doing some different electronics pieces. And in our flexible classroom space, we can do all that at Green Street.
That's fantastic. Well, we have to take another break, and when we come back, we'll talk some more about Girls in Science. Well, we're back to Middlesex Moments Radio Show, and Sara MacSorley is telling us all about Girls in Science, Green Street Teaching and Learning Center, TLC. So one of the projects that Sarah's been working on that I want to hear more about is a coloring book, which is a wonderful way to blend the arts with the sciences. So tell us about this project.
So this is a project I'm doing outside of work, sort of to try to get even more science in my life, because my background is science, but getting more into the administration of programming. We get kind of away from the hands-on stuff a little bit, so I wanted to do something that brought the sciences back for me. And one of the things that comes up with trying to get more women in science, like I mentioned earlier, is really sort of changing the narrative on how we talk about scientists in general, and how that includes all different kinds of people who are already doing the work. And so I had this idea to come up with a Women in Science coloring book that really celebrates women who are currently doing this incredible work across the country in all different types of fields. So, I wanted to focus on women who were currently doing work, and I wanted to make sure it represented a really large, diverse group of people. And the title is Super Cool Scientists, with the idea that it's not necessarily right away you're going to think, oh, this is all about women, because it's not calling that out specifically, but it's like, these women are doing really super cool stuff, and they happen to be women, right? So we already have 11 people who are on board to be a part of it. I think we're going to aim for around 20 to be featured. And the idea is that there'll be a bio of the person and about all of the work that they do and kind of how they got into it. And then the picture of them in their element to color. And those illustrations are being done by Yvonne Page, who works here at Middlesex Community College.
How'd you pick these women? They're obviously alive.
They are alive.
They're all alive.
I'm asking them all for permission to use their likeness and to be able to ask them some questions. And it really started with some who kind of were role models to me. So, for example, one of the first women who said yes was Dr. Sylvia Earle, who's a marine scientist, kind of, her own female Jacques Cousteau. And she started her career in a time where there really weren't that many women in marine science. And when I did my undergrad, more than half of the undergraduates were women in the marine biology programs. So she faced some different challenges, but I don't even remember, it's thousands and thousands of hours underwater that she's logged scuba diving, and she's lived in some underwater environments as an aquanaut. And then as she sort of built her...
Can we just stop for a minute? How do you live in an underworld environment?
So it was cool. It was a NASA-related program. So they were doing a bunch of research on how living underwater would affect humans. And they developed this sort of underwater bubble living environment where the first time they did the project, it was actually all men, and she applied for it and was qualified, but the folks who were running the program was like, oh no, I don't think we can have a co-ed living situation.
Yeah, so, kind of like the space shuttle or something. Yeah.
So she was like, okay, but then they did a second one, and they had an all-women group who did it, and she was the leader of that group. So, it's just like a submarine where there's a place where you can go in and out to adjust for the pressure, and then you live underwater. So she started doing that a few, maybe 20 years ago, 30 years ago, and then she's even done that as recently as 2012, I think, for some water living arrangements. And she really, when she got more in the public eye from the first round of doing that, realized, she had a platform now to really start talking about how our oceans are in trouble and, what we can do to really start saving, the blue heart of the planet, as she calls it, because it's critical. It's like what is every other breath that we take comes from the plankton that's in the oceans, not from the trees that we see around us every day. So, and that's a pretty big number, right? Like that's really important. And so she has really sort of been influential in getting more marine protected areas all around the world, and has an organization now that really kind of promotes that work. So I was really excited that she said yes, because I've looked up to her for a long time and I've seen her speak, and so that was really exciting. Some of the others were people who I'd read their books, like Mireya Mayor, for example, who's a primatologist. She was a former NFL cheerleader and wrote a book called...
Really?
Yep, and so she wrote a book called Pink Boots and a Machete.
Yeah, she's walked on both sides of the fence.
So it was, kind of about how she got to doing this, and she works for National Geographic now. So her work with primatology takes her to sort of these really remote islands and places that really haven't been explored too much. And she actually discovered the world's smallest primate on one of those trips. So so she said yes, and that was exciting. And then some others are folks who I've read articles about, or some other people who I know I've asked for recommendations if I want a certain field kind of represented. So it's worked out pretty well.
You're doing this all on your own. Mm-hmm. And in the end, you're going to publish it.
Yes. So the plan is to do, once I have a few more people who've said yes, they want to be a part of it, I want to do a round of crowdfunding. So do a Kickstarter campaign to sort of raise some more money for the production of the book. Mm-hmm. And then I'm planning to do self-publishing through Amazon's self-publishing arm, for hopefully kind of early in the new year to have it actually published and available.
It's a marvelous idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
Yeah, you should be. So are you going to try out a little bit of the coloring with the children in the camp this summer, or is it still too...
I think it's still a little early
unformed
for that, but there's always next year, so yeah. And I'm one of the things I think I'm really looking forward to is connecting, once it is published, with a lot of those organizations who are doing work to really promote girls in science, and really kind of working together to use this as a resource for them.
And coloring itself has had sort of a rebound in the last couple of years.
Well, you hear a lot about adult coloring and how it's used for stress and anxiety and stuff, and it's actually something that I do on my own, that I've been doing for a while now and find it useful for some things. So it's kind of a perfect time for that piece of it too, because coloring is kind of in the public eye at the moment. So it's kind of a way to work off of that, but also be exposing and celebrating these women who are doing this scientific work.
What's the difference between the kind of coloring you do and just doodling with markers? Is there a difference?
I'm not sure there's a difference. I mean, I think both of those things and kind of the arts in general have sort of a calming effect on people. I guess the coloring is just if you don't think you're creative enough to draw the doodles. Yeah. I don't know, but yeah, I like the I doodle a little bit, but I like having the image already set for me, and then it's I don't know if more mindless is the right kind of word, but I don't really have to pay attention to it. I can just pay attention to my color and my pattern, and I'll do it while I sit and watch TV.
Yeah, maybe it's not so much mindless as getting in touch with another part of your mind.
That could be true. And I've always, I've been the kind of person who've always liked doing things with my hands. So it's something that lets me do that too.
Yeah, it's amazing. Well, what's on dock for the fall at Green Street once you get past the summer?
Yep. So like the summer, like I said, we've got the Girls in Science Camp and some of our math teacher programs, and then come fall we have our Discovery After School program starts up again. So that's probably one of the programs we're best known for around town. It's for elementary school students, and we have a program for middle schoolers on Fridays called Wesleyan Bound, where the kids will go to campus once a week. And it's really sort of a college exposure program, so they get to talk to different student groups and professors, tour the labs, sort of meet with student leaders, and really see what it's like in the life of a college student, which is pretty cool. And we've been doing that for a few years now. And then the classes that take place at Green Street really range from all different kinds of arts to also some science and math classes. So the students who come in have choices. There's the 3 offerings per age group per day, so they really get to kind of pick what's most interesting to them with their parent. And what's nice about the program is you can send your kid for all 5 days a week for classes and homework help, or you can just send them for one class. So it's flexible for different families and different student interest. And that's a program too where we also have a sliding scale for families that might need financial assistance. We have that available.
Do you find these students come back year after year after year?
We do have quite a few who come back. They Green Street, and a lot of people who've gone there, you can talk to them. It really is sort of this community space where people really just enjoy being there. And a lot of the kids want to come back. They really like their instructors. We work with a group of professional teaching artists as well as Wesleyan students. So we work with probably 50 Wesleyan students a semester as either instructors or teaching assistants for those classes, and some of them tutor over homework time too.
Yeah.
And so the younger kids really enjoy interacting with the college students.
Sure. I'm always plagued by trying to figure out the most effective way to assess anything. I think it's really hard to do. So how do you, at the end of the day, say what we did worked really well, and this is why?
So we have, at the end of every semester, we have a student showcase event where we have an exhibit where the students can show the work that they've been working on all semester for the more visual arts-based classes. And then we have a performance for more, for dance or improv comedy, where the classes can kind of show their family and friends who come for this event what they've been working on all semester. And that's really where we get to see the impact of the program. So every semester there's always a couple kids who come in and they're really shy and they don't want to interact with a lot of the other kids, and then throughout the semester you see them, they're being more social during snack time, and you see them talking to more people. And then, at the performance, they're the one up that's singing a solo or that's doing his, hip-hop dance moves in the middle of, and he's doing it by himself in front of everybody.
Yeah.
So you sort of see this transformation in the kids getting more comfortable with themselves. And that's something that's hard to measure. I mean, you can't really put a number on that, but you definitely see the impact that the program has. And we always have conversations with, we're in touch really regularly with our parents. Middletown schools bus the kids directly to us after school, and then parents are just responsible for pickup. So we get time pretty much every day to interact with them and sort of hear how kids are doing outside of Green Street too. And then we get a lot of feedback from parents telling us how impactful the program's been for their kids, which is really always really nice to hear.
That is good. And the parents need to be your partners in this anyway, so that's wonderful. Well, I really appreciate you coming by today to talk with me about Green Street Teaching and Learning Center.
Thanks
and Girls in Science and Coloring and Discovery, all this wonderful stuff. So if anybody is wanting to learn more about Green Street Teaching and Learning Center, it's at wesleyan.edu. /Green Street.
That's right.
And everything will be there for you on the web.
That's right. And if anybody's interested in looking up more about the coloring project, it's supercoolscientist.com.
Perfect. You got your own web domain. Wonderful. All right. This has been Anna Wasesha talking with Sara MacSorley today, Middlesex Moments radio show. If you're interested in learning more about Middlesex itself, we're at mxcc.edu. Take a look. And thanks for joining us today.